Welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast. I'm your host, Christina Smith, and today we are talking about something so important in midlife. If we want a different life, we have to start by giving ourselves permission. And my guest today is Karen Shatafian. She's a life coach for midlife women and a personal development mentor. She's been inspiring, empowering women over 40 since 2013. She's a surfer, a mom, an avid coffee drinker, and lover of all rescue animals. She works with women in an intimate and supportive environment as she helps them gain clarity on how they want their lives to look and create new chapters. After divorce, empty nesting, or many other midlife transitions, she helps women gain the confidence to design their lives in ways that feel really freaking good. Welcome, my guest. Podcast listeners, thank you for tuning in. Let me introduce you to Karen. Thank you, Karen, so much for being here today and talking to us about this very, very important subject that I think we're both really passionate about.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. And yes, I am super jazzed to be talking about this today.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got to talking about giving women permission, or telling them to give themselves permission, I guess.
Well, I am a coach for midlife women. So basically, one of the first things we do is help them give themselves permission to even enter the coaching relationship, let alone make big changes in their lives. But I have been a coach and a women's empowerment blogger for, 10 years now. And when I hit my 40s, when I hit midlife and I hit all the things that come with midlife, I really kind of dove into the personal development world. I have a background in counseling and psychology, so that was kind of in my wheelhouse anyway. But I found that there was really a need for women in midlife to grant themselves permission to start really looking at how they want to live their lives and how to do that. So that's kind of where
Yeah.
my journey began.
And when we talk about permission, what does that mean to you? Because some women are like, what do you mean I have to give myself permission? And I know what it means to me, but I'm wondering what it means to you.
Well, gosh, permission for me is just like, I think about this beautiful permission slip that women can write for
Mm,
themselves because it all boils down to, for me, what we think we are allowed, in air quotes, what we're allowed
mm,
to ask for as women. Because a lot of times, because of the families we grew up in and societal conditioning, we never really fully felt like we were allowed to ask for the things that we really wanted, and
mm,
that goes into why it's hard for us, especially when we get to midlife, to give ourselves permission to really kind of center our own desires and passions and what we want, because we are conditioned to really take care of everybody else.
mm.
We're conditioned, especially if we're a parent, we're conditioned to sacrifice, for our kids, and our needs are always on the back burner. So I think
Yeah.
it's challenging for women to get to midlife. They hear the clock ticking, they kind of are hungry for more, but they don't really know what that is because they've never truly allowed themselves to dive into that. And so that's why I feel like, giving themselves permission to live their life the way that feels good to them is a challenge because they don't feel like they are allowed to do that.
Mm. Yeah. And for me, I feel like in my journey, permission was a lot about looking at a lot of my core beliefs and going, where did these come from? How did they get here? And do they still fit? And one example that I often bring up is like I used to go by the saying that hard work equals success, right? Isn't that what they teach you when you're a kid? And it was a belief that was really getting in my way. And I had to give myself permission not just to let the belief go, but even in the first place to look at it and go, is this true? And really be honest with myself rather than, okay, well, I have some evidence of it, but we have evidence of everything, right? There's also times where I was successful and it wasn't hard. Like, but I
Yeah,
forgot about all those times because I had this one saying and how it really impacted my life. And the reason I started looking at it was I started working for myself and I thought, I have to do all the hard things first. And then if I didn't have any hard things to do, I tended to make things really hard so that I could feel successful. And so I had to give myself permission to start being curious about what would it look like if success was easy? What would it look like if success was full of stuff that I actually enjoyed doing, even if it was, challenging things? What would success look like if it wasn't hard, basically? And so I got to start questioning those beliefs of how I needed to show up. Um, and so giving myself permission was really permission for curiosity. That was the one thing of like, do I really know that these things are true, or are these things that somebody else has taught me? And I think that that's a big piece too. And I love how you're talking about asking for things because that's something that women don't really do. I worked in a nonprofit for a long time that was women, and there was a brother association. The brother association, all the men gave their time and their money, and it flourished. But the Women's Association had a much harder time because women couldn't give themselves permission to spend their time and their money on themselves or on causes that they thought were good. So, and I'm not trying to say that this is a woman man problem. I'm sure men have all kinds of different permissions they need to give themselves. But in that fact, like, women often don't feel connected to their own resources, is how I see time and money. Or at least they don't feel like it's okay to spend it on themselves, at least until they get until midlife. And I know that you and I have both seen these huge changes that happen in midlife that we start going, well, couldn't there be more?
absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what did you have to give yourself permission for in order to move forward? I'm sure there was a
Oh,
million of them, but maybe
so
pick out
many
a couple.
so many things. Um, and I think, one of the I just wanna, back it up a second, but one of
Sure.
the most important things I think for me and the clients that I work with is that, we have to give ourselves permission. And I love how you talked about your journey and you having to give yourself permission because nobody is gonna give it to us. Nobody
Right.
is going to start allowing us to get curious or to, try to center our own needs. Even, the women that I work with are in their 40s and beyond, and most of them are actually in their 50s and older. And so their kids are grown and they still have a very, very difficult time, like you said, spending time and money on themselves, even though they know they want it. Like they have this need, or else they wouldn't be working with me, right? But
Mm.
it's so foreign to them to even, you know, consider, well, what do I want? What feels good to me? And putting that at least equal to everybody else's needs. I mean,
Mhm.
we're not going to put it above everybody else's needs because we don't want to get crazy now. But, at least to put their needs equal to their kids, their partners,
Mhm.
their families, um, yeah.
Absolutely.
So back to what
Right,
I
and it's
think
so
you said.
hard.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right. I was just saying it's hard to get over that hump, or at least it was for me. When I start questioning something, it's hard to get over that hump of like, yeah, I really wanna have more joy in my day, but it's like, when it comes that decision of going, okay, do I go spend extra time, doing X, Y, or Z, or do I actually sit there and make the choice to give myself 30 minutes to be with myself, to connect with myself, do something I enjoy, whatever that thing is that we're like, oh, it always starts for me that I don't have time for that. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, we all have time. We're making a priority, right, of other
Right.
people and expectations. And sorry, to go back to you, and what are some of the things that you had to give yourself permission for?
Oh, no. Yeah, like I said, so many things. I mean, the big thing was I had to give myself permission to want to be in a fulfilling relationship. And
Mm,
I had to give myself permission to really look at that. And it was extremely painful because I was in a long-term marriage. And um, I fought it for a long time, like because I have kids and, we took vows and all of it. And, but at the end of the day, it was a marriage that had run its course. But to allow myself like that, I think is the biggest permission slip I had to write myself, was to allow
mm,
myself to even look at what would it look like if I were truly happy, and then, we tried to be happy within the relationship, and then it didn't work. So we got a divorce and I initiated it. And that was the most, or the biggest permission slip that I had to write myself.
mm. Yeah, that is a huge one, especially if you grew up with this idea that marriage is forever and all of these things, and like how could I give up on this, right? And we worry about judgment and all kinds of things. I think
Um,
one of the things that took me the hardest to give myself permission for was um, to really look at. I spent a year in my last corporate job crying on the way to work every day. I had to give myself permission to not feel guilty for not being grateful, because I had worked my entire life to get to this good on paper kind of place where I had a good job that had benefits and it paid me well, and I had a great husband, and my child was healthy, and I was volunteering, I was doing all of the right things, and yet I was crying on the way to work every day. And I remember just constantly telling myself, Christina, you should be grateful. You know what kind of life you have? Aren't you so lucky? And it felt so shaming. So I had to give myself permission to stop shaming myself for not feeling grateful, because that's what I had learned along the way, is that you're just supposed to be grateful. And I had to give myself permission to stop feeling ashamed about it so that I could really start looking at what is going on. There's something in me that's telling me. I mean, after a year of it, you think I might have caught on a little sooner, but it took an entire year for me to go, maybe something's wrong here.
yeah,
And so giving myself permission just to look at that was amazing and informative.
absolutely. And the guilt and the shame, I feel like, are the two biggest things that keep women from giving themselves permission to even look at what is the
Mm,
cause of my unhappiness right now. Because, yeah, we're taught you check all the boxes, you do all the things, and then life will be great. And so we do that. We're good girls, right? We do all the things, we
mhm.
check all the boxes, and then something's off. And we feel like we're doing something wrong, or we're quote unquote bad if we even question it.
Right,
And
right,
the judgment from others, that as well keeps women from really fully asking, what do I want, and giving themselves permission, because they shame themselves. I should be grateful.
right. I
I'm
have it
I'm
so
married
good.
to a good man. This man is a good man. Why would I ever, consider leaving?
And then we spend so much time trying to make the thing work as it is, right? I mean, there's something in us that keeps telling us this is not working. This is not working, whether that's, leaving your job or leaving a marriage. It's not working. But then we're just like, nope, I'm just going to try to get this peg in that hole no matter how it fits because
Oh,
it's supposed to work, right? We have this expectation that somehow it was just supposed to work the way that we had imagined it. And
yeah.
so giving ourselves permission to dream outside of what is, I think is the most important. And me tuning into who is it that I actually am. But I even had to give myself permission for that, because what if I uncover that the person I am, this life doesn't fit and I need to pick up and move on. And that can be really, really scary. At least, after midlife, we spent our entire life working up to this point, and now it's like, oh, am I just really going to let all this go? And
Yeah.
there is
So
something so beautiful about it, isn't it?
I feel yes, for sure. Once I learned how to deal with the fear and just kind of carry the fear along, because you realize you're never going to not be afraid. You know,
Mhm.
if you want to make some kind of change, no matter what, in what part of your life, it's you're never going to not be afraid. So you just have to do it anyway, right? But yeah, once I learned how to kind of bring the fear along, then yeah, it just became kind of this beautiful adventure that scared the hell out of me. But once I was on the other side of that, opened up so much. Um, and it's amazing to me because I've had clients tell me, I had one woman say, I mean, like she literally had no idea that she could put her needs and desires and passions like above her family. I think she had like 8 kids. It was like a light bulb moment for her, and I just recently talked to a woman last week and she said, wow, I had no idea that pleasure would be a part of coaching. Like she thought it was going to be all like grinding and whatever. And I said, no, we look through the lens of pleasure. What feels good to me when we're creating
Mm,
our life. So it's just yeah, it's interesting. And we as women don't have many role models of what it's like for women to give themselves permission to live their life fully, whatever that looks
mhm.
like for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, that part about pleasure, it so blows my mind, like, many women until they're I don't know, I don't wanna say all women, but many women until they're in their 40s don't even ask themselves, "What brings me pleasure?" Like, we always rely on compersion. "Oh, if I make my kid happy, then I'll be happy. If, I make my husband happy, then I'll be happy." And it's like we forgot we're a whole person, like a whole person that has their own wants and needs, not just, "When I'm pleasing others, then I'm okay."
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like a lot of us move through our lives, right? Whether that was, I'm going to go to college to please my parents, I'm going to get this job so that they'll feel I'm secure, and then all of those things. And then we get to midlife and we're like, hold on, who am I? And we've completely forgotten because we've given all of that back. And I have a story about a client who she does all the things. She was running her own business. She was working with schools. So she was really cheating herself in a lot of ways. She was overworking. And the whole reason she had started her business was so that she could be more creative and innovative in technology. And what happened was between her family and all of her work and this, she even has a nonprofit she's trying to roll out there. All these things that she thought she should do because it was the next thing and it would be great for other people and yada yada. And she just didn't have any time to play. So one of her assignments was before you open up your computer, I want you to spend 20 minutes playing. Like whatever that is that you got into your business for to create things or be innovative, I want you to do that first. Like give yourself and this was hard. It took a couple of weeks before she actually would like give herself permission not to rush right into her work and stop and really but what happened was when she got that 20 or 30 minutes in the morning, the rest of her day went so much more smoothly. She actually got more done because she was focused then for the rest of the day. She wasn't scrolling Facebook during breaks or whatever. She was either playing or she was working. And she was like, I can't believe that playing actually helped me. Like giving myself permission to do this actually helped me get through the rest of my day. But it's because it brought that joy into her life, right? It brought some joy. So then she had more joy for the rest of the day. And when we have more joy, we're probably on Facebook less. We're probably, doom scrolling less and doing all these other things to take away our focus because we're so stuck in this mundane, day that we've built ourselves. So for her, it was phenomenal how it changed her life. And then she got curious and she was like, what if I give myself permission to raise my rates? What if I give myself permission? And then she was like on a permission binge. You're like, what if I give myself permission for all of these things? And she started to, and it was amazing. When she raised her prices, people still paid it. She doubled them again. People still paid it. I was like, see, now you can work less because you're getting as much and now you have more time for play. But she couldn't foresee that because some of us really think that we have to be that Wonder Woman that's doing all of the things and getting completely exhausted.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. We're not raised to feel like that's even a thing,
Mm.
like, oh, let me play and work. Or
Mhm.
another big one is permission to rest, like permission to listen to our bodies
Oof.
before we are burned out, before
Oh,
we are,
before that?
right? Right. Before we're exhausted from doing all the things. Yeah. So that's a big one too. It's, yeah, like you said, the play and the rest,
Yeah,
permission to
and
rest.
yeah, I know for many years I didn't give myself permission to rest until I had worked to exhaustion, basically, until I had really, gotten sick. I mean, that's really how I got into coaching, is I started off as a sick person, and I couldn't figure out why, because I should be healthy. But it was all the stress of keeping up with all of the expectations I had set for myself, and most of them, I mean, I took them on to myself, but I don't think I set a lot of them. Like, I just kind of followed what I thought I was supposed to do according to culture, my parents, my teachers, whoever. Um, and it just brought on a lot of stress. So, in order to give ourselves permission, I know for me, the first step is always like permission to get curious. Like, I don't have to change anything right now. Like, I have to tell clients this sometimes, you don't have to change anything right now. We're just getting curious. Like, this isn't, we're going to make all of our life decisions in the next 5 minutes. But how can we get curious about what else around this could be true? And it kind of reminds me of, Chelsea Handler. She's got all these videos out about like,
Love
I
her.
don't have to
Love.
have kids, I don't have to have a person. Like, this is all okay. And like, that's really giving ourselves permission to live our own journey, because there's still a lot of people who criticize her for that as well. But
Yeah.
she's giving herself permission to live the journey the way that she wants to. And the great thing for most of us is by midlife, we've done a lot of the things that we thought we should have had to, whatever. And yeah, we could continue it on forever. But I think that there comes this point where we're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And it could be crying on your way to work, crying in your marriage. It could be, it could be any of the things that we've always done that we could just give up. I had a client who was in an organization for 25 years as a volunteer, and she just didn't feel like she could give it up, and it was making her miserable. Like, she resented having to participate in it, but giving herself permission to be like, "No, I don't have to do everything that I am capable of doing." And that was a huge one as well.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Christina, and I am your host of this series. And I wanted to offer you one little thing. The way that my clients find their midlife magic and mojo is by becoming intentionally aligned. You may not know what that means right now, but basically, we find out what we truly, truly want underneath that vision board. And then we align our life, our choices, actions, everything with our intentions. Now, you're wondering how that works? I can teach you more, but first you're going to need 3 unique perspectives in order to move forward. And I have put all 3 of those perspectives in a 3-video series called the Intentionally Aligned Foundation Series. And I want you to go grab it now, because it is going to shift the way that you look at things. And that is part of the magic in midlife, is that we get to choose new ways. That series is listed below in the description, or you can go to christina-smith.com /IA series. I hope that you enjoy these 3. There's going to be questions and even some optional other materials that you can dive a little deeper into how we become intentionally aligned. It's all free, so go check it out. It's just more perspectives for you to create that midlife mojo.
Yeah, Absolutely. It's interesting that you bring up Chelsea Handler because I am just have been I've always loved her, but I've been so obsessed with her the past, well, I think since her Netflix show just came out. And I was just thinking about her this morning and how she is literally changing the face of, you know, it being okay to be a woman and not have kids. And
Right.
I kind of thought to myself, gosh, duh. Like, why does it take something, or why does it take, people like kind of shining a light on this to realize it's okay, right? It's
Mm,
okay. But I think it goes to, women have such a hard time giving themselves permission to go outside of what's quote unquote normal or what's expected, you know?
yes.
Um, and so when women have a big platform like that, and choose to kind of shine a light on these things, I'm just cheering in the background. um yeah, so I thought it was interesting you brought her up today because she was been on my mind.
Yeah, because she really did. She's putting it, but yeah, out in the public, right? Where, whether it's by choice or not, some women feel uh obligated to have
Yeah,
those children, even if they're like, I don't even know if I'm the mom type, like, I don't know that I
exactly.
want to give that kind of energy to children. And whether you do or you don't, it's perfectly fine. It's just
Totally.
being able to giving yourself permission to own your own truth and really stick with it. And she doesn't get swayed by people who are like, oh, but here's all the millions of reasons why you need to have kids or why you would be benefited from it. Like, she's like, "No, my experience is my own, and my journey is I'm gonna be benefited by my journey whether I decide to have those children or not." And I think it's I think it's really great because there are there are certain cultural norms, that we suck up and we take on as we're going through life. And
It's those
I
boxes that we're supposed to check as we're going through
Right,
as women, so it's a rebellious act to not check off one of those boxes.
right.
Oh, you don't want to be married, oh, you don't want to have kids, things like that. And so, yeah,
Why
I
would you
think,
do that?
right.
Well, I guess what it's reminding me of is I work a lot with archetypes, and it's very much the maiden archetype. And this
Mm,
maiden archetype is really beautiful because she's youthful, she's got like a bright look at the world, but she kind of she conforms a lot. She conforms to what society expects of her. And it's always weird to me that besides mother, there's nothing really for women between maiden and crone.
right.
So if I'm not a mother, right, and men get to be warriors, and we can be warriors too, but when it comes to just the feminine archetypes, it's like maiden, mother, crone, and it's like, well, isn't isn't there something else in there? Like,
It's true routine. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, and so I guess back in the day when people lived to be 40 or 50 years old, that's just kind of how it went, right? But I think that there needs to be another one in there because there's an archetype that starts even before the crone really takes hold. And I know that we have them all the time, but there's this other one in between that starts questioning those societal rules. Some women might call it the wild woman archetype, right? The one that chooses to come up wild. But there is something to that good girl maiden, that we're all kind of taught, like, this is the way, is to be a good girl and please other people.
absolutely.
So let's clean this up a little bit. What do we need in order to give ourselves permission? I mean, I know that we all give ourselves permission and we can choose it at any second. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this conversation is if there's people listening, whatever it is, and you may not know what you actually want right now, but for me, it's like allowing yourself to be curious about what could be rather than why you should be grateful where you are. Because that just keeps us stuck. I love gratitude when we're feeling grateful, but I don't like gratitude just to ignore the problem.
Totally. I tell my clients, I said, it's okay to be grateful and still want more and still want
Yes.
something else. You can have the duality of both. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm really grateful for what I have and that's it.
Right.
And I think part of the beauty of getting to midlife is that, I don't know, something magical kind of happens when you hit your 40s, or at least for me and a lot of my clients and the people that I know, is you just give less fucks about what other people think about you, or outside
Yeah.
influence, or checking the boxes or fitting into the roles. You really realize this is my only shot at my one wild and precious life. And so if I want it to feel as good as it can possibly feel, it has to be in alignment with what's inside me. We were all divinely created, uniquely and beautifully, with gifts and talents and desires and passions. And when we push those down and when we deny them and let them collect dust, that's how we get so disconnected from who we are. And
Mm.
it's okay, as we're going through life and we're, young women, and we're doing all the things and, trying to be all the things. And if we're going to make the most of our lives, we have to give ourselves permission to at least go inside, at least take a peek, at least look at, when you have those yearnings, or, the feeling. It's like, I had one client and she's like, I just know I'm made for something more. She says, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like, but I know. I just, it kept her up at night. And
Mhm.
so and I think I love how you talk about curiosity, because that's it. Like, you don't, and a lot of people don't hire me, and probably, same with you, is because they are afraid that their life's going to blow up, or they're afraid that they're going to look inside and they're going to have to make all these major changes, right? And that is certainly possible. And it's also possible to just make smaller changes, or just to have an awareness of what your passions even are, or what you even
Mm.
might want to give yourself permission for. So I'm just about helping women just focus on what is in there. I hold up the mirror for them so they can see their reflection back. And so they can really, you know, give themselves permission to just see what's in there, just to get curious.
I love that, and yes, it doesn't have to look like your life is on flames. Probably Karen and I both have some extreme examples of, like, me
Exactly.
crying on the way to work every day and her needing to leave her husband or her marriage, but there are, like, more minor things. There's a lot of women who have been in marriages where they've never asked for what they wanted. You can start with, "Could I just ask for what I want?"
Right.
And these, like, tiny little changes can make huge shifts too. It might be that you're questioning your career, but maybe you want to stay at the same company and just shift your career title or shift your jobs. But until we start looking at that discomfort that's coming up, and it's like the discomfort and the comfort, right? Like, I can stay where I am and it's uncomfortable, but not as scary as starting something new, and that's why I cried in my car for a year because I had a good life. I just wanted it to work the way that it was working, and I didn't want anything to change. Now, I didn't change my husband. Did we have struggles? Sure, but there was things I could solve within our marriage, right? If I really looked at where is my power rather than, oh, he did this thing and I'm so angry. And so it's not about, like Karen said, it's not necessarily about blowing up your life. Sometimes the thing that has changed some of my clients' lives more than anything is, again, starting with that 20 minutes. 20 minutes I'm going to give myself to do whatever creative endeavor, whatever it is that I want to do for myself. 20 minutes is not a long time. You could meditate, you could journal, you could do a million things. You could just tune into, what is that? What are those tears going on while I'm in my car, right? That's where I got to, was like, I would take 5 minutes to breathe before I went into work and go, "What is this about?" And just try to start reaching it. It didn't come automatically. I mean, it's not like, oh, ooh, the angels came down and said, "Hey, Christine, you know what you need to do? You need to quit your job." Because I would not have listened to them. I'd have been like, "That's really scary. I don't think that that's
No,
possible."
yeah. And I
But I
think
had to
too,
start looking at, where could I look? What could I be doing? What is it that I had to start giving myself that 20 minutes every day just to be more curious about what I might be interested in, what I might like to do even as a hobby. what would make me happy? And because like you said earlier, we're so disconnected from that, we forget. We have to sometimes go back to, what did I do when I was young? Like, and I was having fun, because I don't even know how to have fun anymore.
Right. And a lot of it is that internal shift. Maybe it's not changing something on the outside. Maybe it's looking at your marriage differently, looking at your job differently, figuring out how can I bring more pleasure into the things that I'm already doing? How can I bring more pleasure into my marriage? How can I
Mm,
center my own needs? I mean, imagine if, whatever it is, whatever area in life you're feeling, flat or stagnant or disconnected, if you just tried to up your feel good. Like if you just tried to
yeah.
figure out, well, how could I feel better? Maybe I tell my husband to do X, Y, and Z, and that would feel really good,
Mhm.
or, maybe I switch up my desk at work, or I just make it more pleasurable. I mean, I change my chair, or I, put a flower on my desk or something, just ways that make us feel better. And I
Yeah.
just think that's the first step for women is giving themselves permission to do whatever it is they need to do to make their life feel really good.
Ooh, permission to
Mm,
feel good. That alone is such a stretch. And, to feel good, and I would add without external validation, because I think
mhm.
that that's where we get our permissions all janked up, is other people will say, "Oh, but that doesn't make sense," or "That's a silly thing. You don't need to do that," or "How could you, even think that that would be appropriate," right? But instead, really tuning within, I love that you said permission to feel good. I think that that's such a hard one to unpack,
It's
because
so
some of us
hard.
don't feel like we can give ourselves permission to feel good, especially if we feel like we messed up, or we're doing something wrong, or we're not good enough, which, I think everybody has a little bit of that in them. So giving
Absolutely.
ourselves permission to feel good about ourselves can be a real challenge. And mm, brings up my inner little girl that goes, "Nope, you're not supposed to show off, right? You're
Oh,
not
yeah.
supposed to really feel good about your life. You're gonna get too big for your britches," as I would have heard it when I was younger. And so, yes, if I can get anybody to do anything today, is like, give yourself permission just to feel good. And that would
Definitely.
be amazing. That would
Mhm.
be
And
amazing.
we aren't allowed. I had a client who said, I said, okay, what are the top 5 things that you could do that would just make you feel, no matter when, where, how you do them, you always feel good. And so she gave me this list, and they were very doable things. One was having a good meal,
Mhm.
one was going
Mm.
outside for a walk, right? So they were very doable. And I said, well, how can we get you to do these? When can we do these? And she's like, well, on Saturday, I have a free day, I think, so I could do them then. And I said, "How could you give yourself permission to do them every day?" But I think we're so conditioned to be like, "Okay, there won't be anybody else around. My family will be gone. I'll have a free day. I won't have any obligations or work. So then I can focus on my pleasure. Then I can
Mm.
give myself permission to feel good. But not until then. I can't just make, things feel good for me on a random Tuesday."
Oh, yeah.
You know?
There's a real value behind, at least for me, I have to earn that.
Absolutely.
I have to earn that, right? Like, I
Yeah,
have to be worthy of that time. So, if I take care of all of my family and my job and my husband and all these things all week, then Saturday I can give myself a little reward.
exactly.
We actually could feel good every day. Wouldn't Isn't it a shame that we could only feel good on a Saturday? Like, that would be such a shame. And only some Saturdays when kids are away and, everything else is taken care of, but we can actually feel good. We can have that good meal every day. We can go
Right?
for that walk every day, anytime. So
And
if
think
you're
about the
listening to this right
trickle-down.
now, go do
Oh,
it, right? I mean, if you're listening to this right now, go do one thing for yourself. Give yourself permission to go do something good for yourself without having to earn it, without saying, I'll do it when I've accomplished,
yeah.
but do it now. Permission to feel good. I love that.
And think about the trickle down effect. Because if
Mhm.
you're feeling good, then your relationships are going to be better. Your life is going to be better. Your job is going to be a little more, pleasurable. Like when you're
Mhm.
feeling good and you're focused on what feels good, it trickles out to other areas of your life, and you're showing, like if you have kids, or you're showing the people in your life, this is a priority. This is a value,
Mhm.
and then we can hopefully teach the younger generation, not to wait till they're all burnt out and sick and, ready to pull their hair out. They can focus on their pleasure and giving themselves permission on the daily to just
Mm.
focus on their own needs, their own mental health and physical health.
Yeah. Get making it okay for them to give themselves
Mhm.
permission, right, to do that. Hopefully, we'll get to the point where you won't need permission because 'cause it'll just be like a natural lifestyle of living your own life however you want to. I mean, of course, within reasons, we're not hurting other people,
Right.
but living your life in a really good way so that you can feel good about how you're showing up. And I know that we have to wrap up, even though I know Karen and I could talk about this all day long. But
Definitely.
you have a special gift for our audience, and I want you to be able to share that with them.
Yeah, I over on my website, KarenShatafian.com, I have a free video that I have done. It was a workshop that I actually did. And it's a manifesting and a visioning workshop for midlife women. So I basically walk you through, if there's a goal that you have or an intention that you're setting, or you're just kind of maybe unclear about how you want your next chapter to look. I walk you through how to use vision boards, how to use journaling, how to use some other tools, to just really get clear on what you want, how you want your life to look, and how to take action to get it. Because you can't just wish and hope for things to come true. You have to put in the work, you have to put in the action steps. And so, this is a free video that I'm offering for midlife women, who are ready to just kind of get curious about how they want their next chapter to look, and then take steps to go in that direction.
Awesome. Thank you. So give yourself permission to go download that so that you can give yourself permission to dream bigger. And what is it that you actually want? And if you've been disconnected from that, I'm sure that this is a really awesome resource for you to start reconnecting to who am I and what is it that I want in a real way. And I love that it comes with action steps. I'm all about action steps. Thank you, Karen, so much for being here today and recording this podcast with me. I really appreciate it. I think that this is such an important topic. It seems like such a simple thing, and yet there's a big hump when it comes to women implementing permission to feel good, whatever that looks like, or permission to ask for whatever you need, permission to re-question some of the cultural things that you've been taught, all of those things. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Christina. It was my pleasure. I love this topic.
Me too. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I hope that you go and get that gift, and we'll talk next week. Hey, one more thing. When we are all more confident and full of self love, we can act more intentionally and mindfully. What would a world like that look like? I want to know. One way that you can help me with this vision is to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps more than you know, and it's just a few clicks to help me create a more beautiful world. And as always, remember to be gentle with your humanness.